More than 80 million chocolate Easter eggs and 90 million chocolate bunnies are sold every Easter in just the US. For most of us, chocolate represents joy and happiness. However, there are parts of the world where the chocolate industry is destroying lives. Let's take a look at the brief history of chocolate eggs and the dark truth that lies within. Whilst the chocolate Easter egg is a relatively new tradition, the origin of the Easter egg and many more modern-day Easter symbols, such as the Easter Bunny, goes back a very long way and predate Christianity. The egg has been a symbol of rebirth and fertility for many centuries. Eggs were painted with bright colors to celebrate the sunlight of spring. The chocolate Easter egg has developed from the simple type wrapped in paper to the joyful variety wrapped in the brightest foil. The first chocolate Easter eggs were made in Europe in the early 19th century, with France and Germany taking the lead in this new artistic confectionery. A type of eating chocolate had been invented a few years earlier, but it could not be successfully molded. Some early eggs were sold, while the production of the first hollow chocolate eggs must have been rather painstaking, as the molds were lined with paste chocolate one at a time. John Cadbury made his first French eating chocolate in 1842, but it was not until 1875 that the first Cadbury Easter eggs were made. Today, Cadbury is one of the biggest producers of chocolate Easter eggs in the world, with more than 500 million produced every year. Chocolate manufacturers and retailers definitely love this tradition, since it brings them billions of dollars every season. Easter is the key holiday for the chocolate industry and the most profitable time of the year for chocolate manufacturers. 10% of all chocolate sold every year is during Easter. Just in the US, consumers plan to spend a collective more than $24 billion on Easter in 2023. Around $3 billion of that is spent on just chocolate and candy every year. This makes the US the second biggest consumer of chocolate. First place, unsurprisingly, belongs to Switzerland. In comparison, there are around $116 billion worth of chocolate sold worldwide in 2022, and more than 8 million metric tons of chocolate is consumed every year. And this is expected to grow to more than $156 billion by 2030. It's a lucrative business for sure, considering most of the chocolate is produced by a few corporations like Mars, Ferrero, Nestle, and Hershey. But there's one big problem with chocolate manufacturing that holds a dark secret. You see, chocolate is a product of the cocoa bean, which grows primarily around the equator in the tropical climates of Western Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Ghana and the Ivory Coast alone supply about 70% of the world's cocoa. These chocolate companies are obviously not located in these areas and therefore must import all the cocoa they use. And what is the number one priority for these companies? That's right, profit. All they want is as cheap cocoa as possible, and that's why they act like they don't know what's happening on cocoa farms. In better cases, they at least act like they care, but ultimately do nothing. Most cocoa farmers earn less than $1 per day, an income below the extreme poverty line. As a result, they often resort to the use of child labor to keep their prices as low as possible. In many cases, this includes what the International Labor Organization calls the worst forms of child labor. More than 2.1 million children in the Ghana and Ivory Coast work on cocoa farms, most of whom are exposed to this form of child labor. Most of these children are between the ages of 12 and 16, but reports have found children as young as 5. They are either surrounded by intense poverty and begin working at a young age to help support their families. But in many cases, children are sold to traffickers or farm owners by their relatives who are unaware of the dangerous work environment and the lack of any provisions for an education. Often, traffickers abduct the young children from small villages in neighboring African countries, such as Burkina Faso and Mali, two of the poorest countries in the world. In one village in Burkina Faso, almost every mother in the village has had a child trafficked onto cocoa farms. Traffickers will then sell these young children to cocoa farmers for around $250. This is also the average salary these children make per year, if they get paid. But unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. Once they have been taken to the cocoa farms, the children may not see their families for years, if ever. Work days on these farms are hard, and they are being forced to work up to 14 hours a day. They use chainsaws to clear the forest and climb the cocoa trees to cut bean pods using a machete. In addition to the hazards of using machetes, children on these farms are also exposed to agricultural chemicals. Farm owners using child labor usually provide the children with the cheapest food available, such as corn paste and bananas that grow in the surrounding forest. In some cases, the children sleep on wooden planks in small windowless buildings with no access to clean water or sanitary bathrooms. If they work slow or try to escape, their so-called bosses often use physical violence as punishment. In 2015, the Ivory Coast passed laws requiring children to attend school until age 16 and making it illegal for children under 16 to work. But this has had little impact on children trafficked onto cocoa farms. Crazy thing is that these children that harvest most of the world's cocoa never eaten chocolate in their life, and sadly, most of them never will. For years, the chocolate industry refused to address accusations of child labor in its supply chain, and many companies hide the information about where they source their cocoa. Again, the only thing they care about is profit. Even though Nestle and Cargill, Mars, Hershey's, and many other companies were sued multiple times by former farmers for being trafficked into the Ivory Coast as children, enslaved and forced to work on cocoa farms. Every time, Supreme Court ruled in favor of the chocolate companies. Shocking, I know. However, recently, many of the world's largest chocolate manufacturers have admitted to the existence of child labor and slavery within their supply chains. But this is only because they have been pressured to by the public. Since companies have been forced to acknowledge these abusive practices, their next tactic has been to distance themselves from their responsibility to end them. They publicly express concern over child labor and slavery in order to distract everyone from the fact that they profit off the unlivable conditions for cocoa farmers. To ease the pressure for the customers, they have formed various initiatives to supposedly address child labor and slavery in cocoa production. But these initiatives have unsurprisingly done little to remove either abuse. For example, in Cargill's Cocoa Promise program, they say they seek to have 1 million farmers benefiting from the services by 2030. Cargill and other companies intentionally mislead consumers to believe that farmers' lives are improving or will improve, even though farmers themselves tend to see little impact on their lives from these programs. Moreover, these initiatives often don't involve most of the farmers. For example, Nestle's Cocoa Plan only works with 5% of cocoa farmers in the Ivory Coast. There has been almost no reporting that reveals any large-scale impact from these programs. These initiatives started more than 20 years ago when the heads of Mars, Hershey, Nestle, and other companies signed a deal called the Harkin-Engel Protocol, pledging to end the worst forms of child labor in their cocoa suppliers in 4 years. In 2005, they missed the deadline to end child labor in their cocoa supply and proceeded to miss deadlines in 2008 and 2010. The chocolate industry then scaled back its goal to reducing child labor by only 70% in 2020, and by that year, the amount of child labor had only increased. What can we do about this since it looks like there's no end in sight? The truth is that as consumers today, we have no sure way of knowing if the chocolate we buy involved the use of slavery or child labor. Between 1/4 and 1/3 of all cocoa is grown under a fair trade certification label. But many reports found that these numbers are actually lower than reported, and these labels can't guarantee ethical sourced cocoa. It seems like the only thing we can do is let chocolate companies know how we feel about the injustices in the cocoa industry, demand transparency about where they source their cocoa from, and vote for representatives that align with our views about this topic, or just stop eating chocolate altogether. Even though chocolate is a regular thing in our lives, it's important to remember it is a luxury. What do you think? Let's discuss in the comments. Thanks for watching and for all your support. Have a nice day and see you soon.